They met on the roof because the roof was the only place in New Brighton where you could hear your own thoughts when the wind ran clean between buildings. Jack's Rourke stood in the copper light of late afternoon, the sun-setting hairline bright along the knife edges of towers. A few scratches laddered his left arm where yesterday had gotten too close. His City Watch armor was dented but honest. The cape was a joke from his squad that had outlived the joke. He wore it anyway. It made kids smile. Across from him, Asha stepped into the light and the gold under her skin answered. The lines that traced her jaw and arms were a language he didn't read yet, but he knew the mood of it. Today they glowed low, a patient river current. She had braided her crest back under a plain black band. The vest she wore was practical. The smile she offered him was not quite steady. "Thank you for coming alone," she said. "You asked," Jack said, "and you don't ask unless it's important." "It is important," she replied. She tilted her head toward the west where the city lay spread like a circuit board. The long shadow of the heliostat tower crossed the district and turned everything inside it dull. He liked her voice. Aurelian spoke trade with a cadence that made simple statements feel like clean lines drawn on a blueprint. He liked that too. This partnership, if he could call a handful of shared tasks, and 2 polite coffees a partnership, had begun because his boss said the watch needed to build bridges with new neighbors. He'd expected charity. Asha had brought competence. She listened to machines and people like both deserved accuracy. Their 2 small successes, a traffic signal that shouldn't have gone red, a ration queue that kept going wrong, had made a private logic between them. When she called now and said only, "Rooftop, please," he climbed 6 flights without waiting for the elevator. "What do you hear?" he asked. Asha's eyes went distant for a heartbeat. Jax had seen her do this in the waterworks once. Put 2 fingers lightly against a pipe and stop being entirely in the room for a second, then come back with an answer that made engineers nod. She did it now with the air. 3 beats where there should be 2, she said. A 3rd pulse in the city's resonance. It is quiet like a whisper under a door. I think it is a silencer, Jax frowned. Silencers go on guns. This one goes on people, Asha said gently. On my people. It is tuned to the bioluminescent pathways. If they push it, we dim, we shake, we fall. Wind moved between them and Jax felt the temperature drop a degree inside his chest. "You're sure?" "I'm sure enough to ask you to look," she said. "And to bring no one else." "Because if I'm wrong," he finished, "I'm the only one who looks foolish. If you're right, we have fewer leaks." She nodded once. "We have 1 more day until the Unification Parade. If someone wanted to turn neighbors into spectators of an emergency, this would be a stage." The parade route ran from the river to the Civic Plaza and bent under 6 high-rises, including Heliostat Tower. Half the city would attend. The other half would watch the streams. Jack scanned the skyline. The towers were ordinary only at a distance. Up close they hummed with the kind of probability that made his skin itch. "How many silencers?" he asked. "I hear 3. 1 is near. 2 are far." Asha pointed like a conductor. "Near is here within 8 rooftops. Far are east and south. What do they look like?" "Like boxes that want to pretend they are air conditioning." "You brought proof?" She gave him a look that was mostly eyebrows. "If I had proof, I would have set off more urgent alarms." "Fair." He cracked his knuckles and surveyed the roof. "Then we'll find the near one and learn the rest." "You ever hop rooftops?" "My aunts would discourage it," she said. "But I can learn," he grinned. "That's the spirit." They crossed to the far ledge and Jax took stock. Below traffic side. The next roof over sat just close enough to make a jump uninteresting to a teenager and alarming to a parent. He tested the distance with his eyes and then with his whole body, the way search and rescue had taught him. The building's HVAC units thrummed steady, throwing warm breath into the cool evening. He wore soft-soled boots in trust. "Follow my feet," he said. "Hands open, head steady." Asha's luminous lines brightened when she leaped like her body applauded itself. She landed with the quiet thud of someone who had trained balance in a world where falling was not an option. He touched his wrist to hers in a quick, childish gesture that felt like good job and not like anything more. They moved roof to roof, taking the city like a chessboard, L-shapes, cornering open space, using shadows when they had to, using the sky when they could. On the 4th building, Asha stopped abruptly and placed her palm against the base of a small satellite dish. "This is not the one," she said, "but it is listening for the one." Jax crouched beside her. Relay. Yes, I can hear the third beat in its idle hum. If I hum back, it will blink. Don't hum yet, he said, because the part of his job he loved best was asking cautious questions in time to make caution count. They circled the dish. The cable ran along a rubber strip to a junction box. Jax tugged gently, loose. Nobody had bothered to secure it to code. He loosened 4 screws with the tool he carried because life had taught him you should always have at least one tool. The box opened on neat wires and a circuit board with a glossy sticker that announced a maintenance contract with Bastion Dynamics, a private defense contractor that wore community language. Like a soft sweater, Jax put up a hand. Photo. He took 3. Would you recognize the signature if you heard it again? Asha nodded. The third beat has a little. She looked for a word and found one he would understand. Limp. He fixed the plate back in place. Let's find the limp. On the 6th roof, they found an AC unit that was new enough to look confident yet old enough to call itself neglected. Asha crouched beside it and drew a slow breath. The glow along her neck brightened and then dimmed in a sawtooth pattern. This one, she whispered. It brings quiet to all things. Jack stole the look of a man preparing to make enemies of very polite people. The box did have the wrong smell. He knelt, lifted the metal skirt, and saw a heart that didn't belong, a matte gray module bolted inside the housing. No serial numbers. No kind decals. 2 antennas, one inward, one outward. A small cylinder nested in foam against one side. Is that a battery? He asked. A capacitor, Asha said, voice steady. For fast bloom. He studied the mounting. 4 bolts, cheap tamper paint daubed over the heads. He could have pulled it, but the capacitor made his nerves say don't. They needed to understand, not just react. He snapped photos. He took measurements with a little tape that lived on his belt. He angled the flashlight to catch faint writing on a connector. He captured the specific blue of the sealant. Then he did something he didn't often do. He asked for help. He tapped his wristband and opened a closed channel to Jerome Hanna, the city's communications officer and Jax's favorite kind of dull. Jerome, need a silent look. Rooftop of 1212 Halden. Schwiak Unit 4. Find me any maintenance tickets in the last 6 months. Also, compare the module inside to anything we own. Jerome's voice arrived with the slow patience of a man who disliked speed limits only because they weren't polite enough. On it, do not touch the module. Are you with a friend who understands electricity? Better, Jack said. I'm with Asha. Then I'm reassured, Jerome replied and cut the line. Asha peered through the grill. If we remove it, they will know. It is part of a chorus. The conductor will hear when a singer stops singing. Jack smiled despite himself. You keep using choir metaphors. I'm going to start bringing a baton. I will carve your baton from a kind metal, she said gravely, then added, with glitter. He stifled a laugh. He needed his brain for the next step. Let's follow the cable. The outgoing antenna line ran to a repeater near the vent stack. He traced it, felt the slight warmth of signal under the plastic, and found a second cable piggybacked under the lip, thin, cheap with tape that said, I was installed by someone who learned their craft from a tutorial and a budget. He followed the piggyback to a maintenance hatch, down into a stairwell, up again to a roof with an unhelpful sign that read, No access. Asha rested a hand against the door and hummed a single note. The mushroom cap alarm in the corner sighed, changed its tiny mind about being alert and went back to sleep. That trick shouldn't work, Jax muttered. That trick should work more often, Asha said. Machines want to be persuaded. They stepped into the stairwell and listened. Feet, voices. Jax gestured right. Asha gestured left. They froze, revised, and went up. On the landing below the roof, a pair of men loitered with the particular posture of people who are not security, but wish they looked like it. They wore the comfortable black of well-paid contractors. Their conversation was about football, which told Jax they weren't expecting company. He and Asha leaned into shadow and became 2 sensors in a world of sensors. One man yawned. You think they'll actually push it during the parade? Boss says not to hope. Boss says stay ready. Boss said the legal piece will look better if nothing happens. Just the threat. Keep everyone spooked. Jax closed his eyes and counted to 3 because it was the right amount of time not to do something he couldn't take back. The other man snorted. Spooked plays well on streams. People love a cliffhanger. Asha's hand brushed his sleeve, a grounding. Her markings had dimmed to almost nothing. She looked like a nightlight trying to decide not to offend. He breathed out slow. They needed names, not just disgust. He eyed the access panel on the wall and smiled with no humor at all. The cheap cable they'd followed ducked inside. The label read, Subnetwork, HST Main 02, Heliostat Tower Maintenance. Jerome's voice returned at his ear. Jax, think kind thoughts about your comms office. Bastion Dynamics has 4 maintenance tickets in the last quarter, across 3 rooftops along the parade route. The module you photographed matches a prototype in an industry journal article nobody cited. Author's name is Hale, as in Commissioner Hale. Hale ran public safety. Hale smiled like a metal and spoke like a gentle knife. Hale had argued 3 months ago that the refugees should be moved to a protective camp for their own good. The council had voted no, citing compassion and common sense. Hale had lost clean. Jax had slept well that night. He did not sleep now. We need hard evidence, Jax whispered, and we've got 2 watchers between us and the roof. Go around, Asha murmured, through the wall, through the air. She led him back down a flight and out onto the 7th floor catwalk. It wrapped the building like a ribbon. External ladders bridged gaps to neighboring structures. Jax eyed the first ladder's bolts. Good steel. Old brass. A little rust like freckles. He climbed. Asha followed, never looking down. Not because she was afraid, but because she respected the way staring into a fall can make the fall stares back. They crossed a narrow gap the width of a car hood, stepped onto the lip of a lower roof, and crouched beside a stack of solar panels. The city's noise rose up like applause. Above them, 3 floors. The roof they wanted held the 3rd pulse. Jax estimated and chose the maintenance shelving bolted to the wall. It had not been designed to carry weight. It would. He took the first bracket with his left foot and the seam of a window with his right, then found the rhythm that makes climbing a form of speech. Left bracket, right seam, breathe. Asha mirrored him exactly, hands open, glowing lines quiet. When they reached the top, he rolled over the parapet and landed on felt. The air conditioning module sat like a small idea trying to grow into a problem. The repeaters near it blinked a polite hello. A camera perched on a mast had been pointed just 5 degrees the wrong way, which told Jax someone had told it to mind its own business. He and Asha worked in tandem now, wordless. He photographed serial numbers that were supposed to be secret. She hummed to the module until it gave up a whisper of its broadcast. He copied the call sign. She recorded the limp. The stairwell door banged open. Jax slid behind the repeaters and made himself small. Asha flattened under the lip of the parapet and dimmed until she was more shadow than light. The 2 men from the lower landing came out onto the roof like they owned noon. 10 minutes, one said. Boss wants confirmation on heartbeat. Heartbeat steady, the other said, tapping his pad. 3rd beat syncs. South unit online. East unit checking now. Jax felt the hairs on his arms lift. He didn't need Asha's ear to know. The 3rd beat was the silencer chorus breathing in. After the parade, the first man said, we let the city talk itself into a plan. We reluctantly agreed to the camp. Boss gets a ribbon for public safety. Investors get a guarantee. And we get a bonus, the second man said cheerfully. Bonus? The first laughed. We get another contract. They did their checks, made notes, and left. The door clicked softly behind them. Jax counted to 15, which was enough time for stupidity to calm. He raised his head. Asha's mouth was a thin line. We cannot be careful much longer. He nodded. You're right. We need to make the chorus break time. Can we jam? Jamming gets called vandalism, he said. If we can show they built this, we don't need to jam. We need to get to the conductor. Commissioner Hale, Asha said, no heat in it. Where will he hide? Not hide, Jax said. Perform. He'll be at the Civic Broadcast Center before the parade to ensure safety. If he's the one pushing the 3rd beat, he'll do it from the room with the most witnesses and the least suspicion. She met his eyes. Then we go to the room and we take his conductor's wand away. He grinned despite himself. We try, and along the way we make a lot of copies. They left the module inviolate but not unknown. Jax sent the photos to Jerome with a short message. Chain of custody from roof to council quietly. Jerome replied with a thumbs-up emoji that managed to look like a law degree. They retraced their path and made it back to the original roof without getting caught by anything but the evening. The light had gone syrup thick and the wind had a breath of the river in it. Jack stood with his hands on the ledge and looked at the city. The way you look at a friend you mean to defend. How scared are you? He asked. Asha considered. Scared enough to do careful things quickly, she said. You? Scared enough to talk to the press if we have to, he admitted. And to sing if it comes to that. Her markings brightened. You sing? Very badly, he said. We will put you in the back row, she said warmly. Where bad singing can support good, he laughed. He needed that. He also needed a plan. They spent the night in the kind of work that looks like no work at all, writing down the order of moments, scanning through maintenance logs, highlighting names that repeated and addresses that owned too much convenience. Asha mapped the resonance network, rooftops and lines like a patient constellation. Jax mapped access. Who had codes, who had keys, who owed favors, who held grudges. They ate noodles from a street cart and drank tea steeped too long. At one point, 3 teenagers on skateboards cut through the plaza and shouted, "Hey, Jax," and he waved back because even long nights can afford civility. At 2 in the morning, a message pinged from a friend who worked nights in the broadcast center. Hale arrived early. Special access badge. Studio C, new box in rack 4 labeled redundant clock. A photo followed, a rack of neat gear with a gray module that did not look like time, and a tiny logo that might have been Bastion's if you squinted. At 4, a second message, 2 more contractors at Heliostat. East and south roofs both secured. At 5, Jax knocked on the glass door of the municipal judge's office because she was always there before dawn. She read the affidavit, called Jerome on his private line and said, "I can authorize a quiet look and a quieter copy. I cannot authorize heroics." "There will be none," Jax said, and meant it. "Only piano." She frowned at him. He shrugged. She sighed. "Fine," she said, and signed. At 7, the sky turned pink like a promise. At 8, Jax and Asha slipped into the broadcast center with 2 badges and an air of belonging. Belonging is a costume you can wear if you stand up straight. The Civic Broadcast Center had been designed by someone who loved glass and lines and the idea of seeing through. Studio C lived on the 2nd floor behind a door composed entirely of the words, "Authorized personnel only," etched over and over in different languages. Jax's badge convinced the lock. The studio sat quiet and professional, a small stage, 3 cameras, a teleprompter with an encouraging gaze. The equipment rack along the back wall hummed modestly. There, in rack 4, a gray module blinked the wrong way. Asha rested her fingers near it without touching. "Third beat sleeps here," she said, waiting for applause. Jax pulled a pair of slimline evidence tags from his pocket and placed one on the rack's side panel. He took photos. He opened the rack with a key he had no right to have. He didn't remove the module. He slotted a signal splitter into the line and looped a copy of the outgoing feed to a portable recorder. Asha tuned the recorder's input with a hum until the copy looked like the original. Jerome's voice sounded in Jax's ear 5 minutes later, quiet as a librarian. "I see it. Recording on my end as well." He closed the rack and breathed. "Now what?" "Now we wait for Commissioner Hale," Asha said, "and for the third beat to ask for a hand." They didn't wait long. 20 minutes later, Hale arrived with 2 aides and a smile you could spread on toast. He wore a suit so well the suit was probably smug. He practiced modesty like a sport. He shook hands with the techs, made a joke that was lightly self-deprecating, and placed his palm on the rack panel for the second it took to whisper a command word to the module. Jax saw it in the LEDs. A tiny shift, a brightening, a new blink cadence, listening. A camera tech called out, "We're live in 5, and Hale nodded, smoothing his tie. All wholesome intention and civic care. Jax felt his phone vibrate. Jerome, signal propagated to east and south units. Third beat syncing. Parade begins in 90 minutes. Asha's markings flared, then dimmed. "We will not prove badness by letting badness happen," she murmured. "Agreed," Jax said. "We'll prove intention by showing attempt. Then we'll break the attempt without breaking the city." "How?" she asked, and he heard not doubt but invitation. He chewed the inside of his cheek. He thought about her word, chorus. He thought about the rooftop modules tuned to amplify a silencing frequency across bodies that had done nothing but glow. He thought about the city's natural rhythms, traffic lights, elevator pings, sidewalk buskers, the little chimes at crosswalks that sang for people who saw with ears. He thought about timing and courage, and the way you could teach a crowd a simple thing quickly if you made it feel like belonging. We make a counter-chorus, he said. Not a jam, a weave. We ask the city to sing back something the module won't expect, an irregular rhythm that reads like friendly noise to monitors but puts the silencers to sleep. What rhythm? The heartbeat of walking, he said, surprised by his own answer. Heel-toe pause. The rhythm of climbing stairs. The rhythm of applause when the speaker earns it instead of demands it. Her smile came like sunrise. We ask the people to clap for us, she said. Delighted. We ask them to clap with us, he corrected. He called Mara, head of the volunteer squad, because she already knew how to move people without scaring them. He called the director of the city band because bands know rhythm and crowds. He called 3 school principals because students could spread a pattern faster than rumors. He called the community radio station because the old transmitter could blanket neighborhoods the streams ignored. He called the Unification Parade lead because she had a megaphone and a moral center. He asked nothing big. In 30 minutes, will you ask your people, your marchers, your watchers on balconies, your friends to clap a pattern when we cue you? A slow clap with a 3-count hiccup, 1, 2, 3, pause 1, 2, pause 1, 2, 3. What does it do? The parade lead asked. It tells the city we are awake, he said. And it will sound beautiful on the stream. She laughed. That's good enough. Asha stepped to the rack and hummed a descending line. The module hiccuped in a way that would look like nothing to anyone who wasn't listening for it. The third beat will not like surprises, she said. It will try to pull more power. When it does, it will show its hands. Jax pulled up the city power dashboard on a terminal and winked at the intern who looked like he wanted to ask questions and remembered he was intern. Electricians watched their panels. Engineers watched their numbers. Jerome watched his recordings. Neighbors watched neighbors set chairs on sidewalks. The parade began with the kind of awkward grace that makes love obvious. Children in paper suns. A brass section that refused to acknowledge keys. A line of scooters decorated like fish. The Unification banner held at one end by a human grandmother, and at the other by an Aurelian teacher whose glow spelled welcome in 2 alphabets. Hale stepped onto the stage in Studio C and talked about safety so sweetly it could have been a lullaby. The third beat rose in the city's echo. Asha touched Jax's arm. Now, she said. He nodded to the band director, who nodded to the percussion line, who nodded to the first row of the parade watchers. Clap, 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 pause, clap, clap, pause, clap, clap, clap. It spread like a scent. Balcony to balcony, stoop to stoop, block to block. The pattern was simple enough to teach itself and weird enough to resist turning into a chant. The band caught it and warmed it with snare and cymbal. Crosswalk chimes answered whether they meant to or not. The city found a whiff. The module hated it. Jax watched the power draw spike. He watched the far roof units pull at the grid. Jerome's voice breathed. It's asking for more. It's yelling at the chorus. Asha hummed into her mic and sent the clap back as a map. The east and south units tried to assert their heartbeat and tripped over applause. The third beat stuttered, then fell into the pocket like a drummer who finally admits the groove is smarter. Hale's face on the studio monitor tightened for exactly 1 second, the kind of flick that gives a lawyer a good day later. Then he smoothed it. He smiled. He gestured toward the window behind the cameras where the parade made small bright noises. New Brighton knows how to celebrate, he said kindly, and how to stay safe. In the rack, the gray module flashed an error. Jax had never loved an error more. He nodded to Asha. She hummed the lullaby line again, the one that said it's okay to stop now, and the module stopped. It didn't die, it slept. That mattered because sleeping confessed intent while avoiding panic. Jerome's voice sounded deeper now with satisfaction that had done the work. We have the attempt, the propagation, the power spike, the failure. We have signatures. We have names. Keep rolling, Jax said. He turned toward the door as it opened. Commissioner Hale stepped in with the performance still on his face. He stopped when he saw Jax, then arranged his mouth into the shape of mingled surprise and relief. Officer Rourke, he said warmly. Keeping an eye on things? Exactly, Jax said. On things. And on attempts. Hale's eyes flicked to the rack just once, just enough. Attempts? We've recorded a signal originating in this rack, this module here, propagating to rooftops the length of the parade, Jax said, pleasant as tea. A third beat keyed to the bioluminescent frequency of our Aurelian neighbors. We also recorded your arrival and command initiation. Hale laughed, a short sound like a cough rehearsed. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious recording, Asha said. She stood very straight, and the light in her lines had settled into a pattern that spelled witness. If you wish, we can play the third beat now, but the city will sing back. Hale's smile didn't reach his eyes for a beat that was not third or kind. This will be a misunderstanding, he said. Redundant clock systems often... Power spikes, Jerome said, stepping through the door with a small camera on his shoulder and no cape at all. We have the logs. And we have a judge who would like to speak to you about unauthorized network devices and public endangerment. 2 officers stood behind Jerome, uniformed, calm, and clearly uninterested in drama. Hale's aides arrived at the same time and froze, caught between a man they worked for and the job they also worked for. Everybody looked like mourning on 4 hours of sleep. Commissioner, Jack said not unkindly, you're under arrest for attempted sabotage of critical infrastructure and conspiracy to cause public harm. You have the right to remain silent. I sincerely hope you use it. Hale opened his mouth and closed it. He looked at the rack again, then at the parade on the monitor, then at Asha, then at Jax. He seemed very tired suddenly, as if the weight of wearing a good suit had finally reached his bones. I had a plan, he said, so quietly the microphone almost missed it. It wasn't to hurt anyone. It was to prevent harm. By making a little harm first? Asha asked. Like setting a small fire to convince people to buy water. He flinched. Not because she was wrong, Jax thought, but because she saw him cleanly. He lifted his hands. The officers stepped forward without force. Hale walked out without looking back. Jax exhaled. The room seemed larger. The module in the rack looked suddenly small. Asha leaned a hip against the console and folded her arms in a posture that would have read as defiance if her face hadn't looked so tired. Jax wanted to find her a chair and a glass of something sweet and the noon she hadn't got yet. You were right, he said simply. So were you, she answered. The city can sing. He watched her for a second. The parade feed cut to a shot of 2 kids sharing a banner, one dark-haired and freckled, the other gold-bright with little lens flares dancing along her cheek. They were laughing in the way of kids who have not been asked to carry anything too heavy for too long. I like your word for this, he said. Chorus. Belonging, he said. You make it sound like a skill. It is, she said. We practice together until the day we need it. Then we keep practicing. He bumped his shoulder to hers, a small punctuation. The day didn't end with the arrest. Cities don't do tidy. There were statements and questions and a press conference where the mayor said the words deeply troubling 3 times and the need for transparent inquiry twice. There were calls for patience from people who had never met an emergency that arrived on time. But there was also a parade that did not panic, a chant that never turned cruel, and 1,000 palms that stung happily. Jerome handed the evidence copies to the judge at dusk. She listened to the recordings without changing her expression and then said, I will sleep well because you were restless. Mara appeared at some point with sandwiches and a kind word for everyone in earshot. 3 school principals sent videos of their students clapping the pattern in the gym and cheering when the echo turned pretty. At sundown, Jax climbed the same stairs he had climbed that morning and found Asha on the roof again. The skyline held the last light like a promise. The wind had its hands in her hair. I told Aunt Rami what we did, she said without preamble. She said to ask you to dinner. She will feed you until kindness becomes structure. He chuckled. I'll bring an appetite. Bring your cape, she said, deadpan. She wants to pretend you are a small heroic curtain. He made a face. She laughed for real. The sound that had made the afternoon feel like survivable weather. He let the quiet sit for a while. He thought about the roof boxes, the 2 they hadn't touched, now sealed with evidence tape and watched by quiet officers, and the studio module, now sleeping in a lockup that smelled of old chairs. What happens to people who built the third beat? He asked finally. They become a story we tell, Asha said, about how fear tries to get our attention by pretending to be safety, and how we answer with better attention. He nodded. And to us? She looked at him as if considering a drawing that almost made sense. We will walk 10 more rooftops, she said. We will learn 10 new songs. We will think of the city as an instrument and treat it like a neighbor. We will make mistakes and apologize in time, I hope. We will fix many small things so the big things are slower to break. He thought of his cape and his scratches and the way he had once, at 22, carried a child down 27 flights of stairs while smoke tried to draw pictures in his lungs. That sounds like a life. It is, she said. It is ours. And we can invite more people to sing. He glanced at the skyline and saw on 3 rooftops he could name, silhouettes against the fading day. People standing in 2s and 3s where contractors had stood alone. He heard, faint and unlikely, a clap pattern from somewhere downtown, followed by a ripple of laughter like water over stones. He felt his shoulders settle into a posture he recognized as belonging. Tomorrow, he said, we'll start earlier. And we will end with tea, Asha said. With too much sugar? That seems reckless, he said. Some risks are safe, she said, and smiled. They stood a while longer after that, saying nothing. The city blued. Lights began to stitch themselves along streets and through windows. Somewhere, a brass section tried the parade rhythm again and nailed it on the 3rd go. The wind made its own music against the ledge. Jack shifted and looked at her, at the golden geometry of her skin and the pattern of light that lived there as if homework had decided to become art. He thought about the day's narrow corners and the ways they had leaned together through them. He thought about all the times everything could have gone wrong and chose not to because they had not chosen wrong. Thank you, he said, simple as a doorway. Asha's markings warmed and then calmed. You are welcome, she said. We will thank the city, too, and the people who clapped. We should send cookies, he said. We will, she replied. Many cookies. With glitter. We're not putting glitter on, she said quickly. Around. Near. An aura of festive. He laughed, surrendered, and watched the day end. The roof felt like the right place to be when you had helped a city remember itself. Up here, the heartbeat was easy to hear. It was 2 beats, not 3. It was the rhythm of feet on stairs, of hands finding each other, of a chorus tuning for the next song. HFY, someone had written on a poster at the parade, with a heart drawn in marker beside it. Humans, for yes. The kids had laughed and made up their own versions. Human friends, yeah, hold fast you. The one Jax liked best had been scrawled by a kid with very neat letters. Humans, finding you. He looked at Asha and then at the city that had decided to clap itself into safety and thought, that's the one. The wind changed. Night came. They left the roof together. One set of soft-soled boots and one set of footsteps that sounded like listening, and took the stairs down into a city that had learned a new song it would not forget soon.